In this video I'm going to be potting up some Cerinthe that I had to start again this spring. I did start my Cerinthe last autumn because they can overwinter well, but because we had, I think it's because we had a heat wave, mine did sort of bolt and get really leggy, and I just decided it was easier to just start them again with a fresh new plant this spring, which is also possible. They don't obviously have to be overwintered. So I started them in the greenhouse and they did very well. And so now I'm going to start moving some out because they're pretty hardy and I need space in my greenhouse, you know. I mean, this is the thing with gardening. It's a constant job. And I don't mean that in a, oh, it's hard work. I just mean that in that there's always something you have to look out for. So every day I go out, monitor if the seeds need watering, monitor if the heat bed needs watering, monitor what can be moved, because obviously as I sow new stuff I need to make stuff space for other stuff. So I sow something, it needs to go in the greenhouse, then something needs to come out of the greenhouse because the greenhouse is more or less full. So that is a very long way of saying I'm moving some stuff out of the greenhouse. Alright, there are three things I'm going to do. I want to plant some Cerinthe up in this pot. I really like the kind of stately height of the Cerinthe, and I kind of like it to be disproportionate to the pot. So the pot is going to be probably a bit smaller than I need, but if you wanted something balanced and really contrived, but I want it to look, it's a cottage garden, and the whole thing about cottage gardens is they evolve. So many people do try and contrive them, but I think that takes away from the organic growth of a cottage garden. And I don't just mean the organic growth of the plants, I mean the layout, everything, the variety of plants. It all evolves. The whole point with a cottage garden is to cram in as much as you could, to use an old pot as a, you know, for growing herbs. And it was a garden that wasn't wasteful. You don't buy a load of stuff in, you repurpose things. It just, that's how things were back then. When they evolved, we didn't have DIY stores and garden centres like we do now. So you had to make do and mend, and that is the essence of the cottage garden, as well as obviously the billowing plants. So for that reason, obviously I want the pot to be slightly disproportionate, as though it was just all I had kind of thing. I basically reused the soil. You can see that that was a huge pot. You know, you don't want to be having to fill up huge new pots all with new soil and compost all the time, because that gets really expensive fast. So I took out the top layer of weeds and soil, and then I enriched the used compost inside the pot by just forking in some new compost and watering that in. But really, the Cerinthe are so young at this stage, their roots are only going to be affected by what I grow on the top, by the soil, the compost on the top of the pot, which is why I'm going to actually top it up with decent quality compost, all new. And I'm also going to make it more seed friendly by adding some sharp sand here and mixing that in. And I make it all wet before I even put it in the pot. So for now, all the roots are going to go straight into the same kind of compost they've already germinated in. And then as they mature, they will work their way down into the spent compost, which has also been enriched with new nutrients. And also these nutrients from the top layer will also by then have worked their way down into the rest of the pot and into the spent soil. So it should all be good, and it should really save you a lot of money on compost. Alright, so then I just added the layer of the fresh seed-friendly compost onto the top of the spent compost and just smoothed it out so there weren't any air pockets. So I'll take the bigger one of the two, and of the three, I've got three, look, and see what we do with these. Excuse me, what? Oh, Mavis. You can see I sowed these relatively recently, about a month ago today. Well, it's the 15th today, so a little over a month ago. So So the reason I cut them out was just so that I would not disturb the roots. Sometimes in the winter sowing method, when you're sowing these bottles, it can be quite difficult to get them out. I'm going to just pop them right here, just like that, at various intervals. The idea being, there's one there, look at that. The idea being that I want them to fill this pot and fill it sort of opulently. I don't want gaps. This cottage garden and gaps don't go together. I mean, obviously this time of year you haven't got a lot of choice, but when you get to high summer, you do not want gaps. You know, just tease them apart, trying not to damage the stem, obviously. Good root on that, can you see that? And then pop it in, right down. Make sure there's no air pockets. I will put that little rogue one in there. I think it's got a chance. Let's take another one. Okay. Probably, and I can always thin it, you know, if it did turn out that I've gone too close together, I can in fact just thin them out at a later stage. As you can see, by preparing the compost in advance before I plant the Cerinthe in the container, it means that the roots aren't damaged at all. It's just very, very easy to just push your finger in and then transplant the seedling by dropping the whole root in, and that causes minimal disruption to the plant. Just some other things to know. They need a sunny spot, so they really need full sun. They will self-seed if you can get them to flower and establish. They will self-seed all over your garden. And the other thing is, as they're in a container, I can bring them in if I think there is going to be a hard frost. I'm not going to harden these off like babies. They should be okay. I did check the forecast. The coldest we're getting is 5. So, not -5, 5. So that's nowhere near a frost here. So they're going to be okay unless the temperatures plummet significantly. Then I can bring the whole pot back into the greenhouse. The second way I'm going to plant the Cerinthe out is straight into the soil, and then I'm going to cover them with a cloche. So obviously what I'm going to do here is amend the soil, break it up, make sure that those little baby seedlings can get through this clay. And to do that, I'm going to add more compost and water that through and just really break it up, and break it up deep. So that those roots, because I noticed when I was putting them in the pot, the roots are very long and deep. So it's not enough to just break up the surface of the soil. I have to go deep, and I love my kind of one-pronged trowel. It broke and left me with a claw, and the claw is actually brilliant for digging down deep and breaking up that soil real deep down, so that those roots can really go down into the soil. So I'm going to plant these about the same distance they were in the pot. And, you know, with a cottage garden, you are always weaving things in and out, knitting them together. You're not just planting a raised bed of this and then another raised bed of that. Everything is weaving together. So you can see, because I took my time to dig the soil deep, I can just really shove my finger in and then drop the whole root in, as I did in the terracotta pot earlier. And as I would do if I was overwintering sweet peas, I just use an upturned water bottle with the bottom cut off as a cloche, and I just kind of mound up the soil around it to sort of hold it onto the surface of the soil so it doesn't blow off in the wind. So I put those out there, and then I weaved some more here behind this dianthus and these alliums, and behind there are some Shasta daisies and some Monarda bee balm. So this should hopefully, and then we've got this yarrow here, Achillea. So I'm hoping this area will knit together really well once these start growing. And the bottles are really good because they, first of all, they just keep the cold off. They keep the slugs off. Not always, mind you, the slugs can slither in through the top. I've learnt that the hard way, but in general they will deter them. They deter the animals, my pets, but they also serve as a reminder that you don't want to plant something else there. You know, if you forget that they're there, or You know, you stand on them, you walk over them. It's the following morning, another checkup. And as you can see, their first night outside, even without the cover, they're fine. And the ones covered are also fine, nice and steamy in there, nice and warm. There they all are, absolutely fine. So if you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell as I upload frequently and often. And also check out my website at jillbretherton.com, where I have a gardening blog, so I'll be updating that. I generally put a little bit more information because obviously I don't want videos to get too long, they can get boring. So I add more technical details and things onto my website, though it's quite new, so please be patient. I also have some products, and before I was a gardener, I was a writer. So I am actually going to relaunch many of my books, and I have many more that I never published in the first place that I'm also going to publish. And I had a second viewer request on these bamboo sweet pea bamboo teepees, so I will definitely be doing a video on that next. No, next I have marigold and ladies mantle sewing, and then I'm going to do my viewers request on how I built these teepees. They're very simple and very cheap, so make sure you subscribe, click the notification bell and look out for those videos. Thanks for watching. Bye.